I would say we can go ahead and get started. I see 22 people. That's not bad for summer. It gets recorded so people can come back and watch. And then there's obviously a flurry of emails afterwards about the site-specific pieces. So Lizette's going to show us some slides. It's kind of the standard for the first couple. And then the milestone slide is probably the one I do want to spend a minute or two on. As everybody knows, we've certainly had some significant delays. We by now, when we had originally mapped this out, we thought by now we'd have all the sites up and running, we'd be collecting some data. And for a series of reasons, it has not quite worked as quickly as we thought. We know there were issues with IRBs and data use agreements, and just the technology piece and the education piece has gone slower than we thought. I think we're catching up in many ways, and you can see kind of the status where we are. We have just recently put in a letter to PCORI for a no-cost extension for this project. That should not surprise anybody, since it was supposed to end in the end of August, and clearly by then we will not have completed all of these milestones. But I do think within a year, all these things are very much should be able to be done. So you can see the status here. A bunch of the things are now complete. The nurse education module will show what the numbers look like, but we're at about 80% of the sites are at least at 80%. So we're making progress there. And then you'll see these other couple pieces that are in the 3 or 4 out of 10. So I think the takeaway from that is we are making progress on building the alert, finalizing it, and getting us the data. So there are 3 or 4 sites that have done different pieces of those. You're going to see what that looks like specifically later. So I think the takeaway is, it is possible, it is doable. These are all able to be done. And I think if each of the sites keeps pushing forward, I've been trying to look at some and follow up with some emails from individual sites about problems with their specific pieces for some of these things, but we are making significant progress. We are slowly getting ready to actually roll out at a few of the sites, and I think we've got a slide later on to show kind of where we are at those places. Does anybody have, before you go on, Lizette, does anybody have any comments or questions, or have real concerns about over the next 6 to 12 months really making this thing happen? Now would be a time to talk about it. What we've been telling PCORI is, yes, all the sites were delayed for different reasons, but now we actually have places that are going to be starting to roll out within the next month or two, and then we really anticipate all the sites are going to be able to do this. And I will say that if I know I've been speaking to 1 or 2 sites that are a little concerned, just overall. If you think that these are not doable things for the next 6 to 12 months, just shoot an email to me, and can just be to me, and we can set up a time to talk. Because what PCORI has told us is they really expect the whole thing to happen at all 10 of the sites. Any comments either from any of the sites or Michelle, Lizette, or any of the Hopkins people on that, topic? Okay, so hopefully that was a little bit of a rah-rah. Let's keep this moving forward. We can keep moving, Lizette. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon. And I know we talk about this each month, but I think it's important to kind of revisit to make sure people are making progress along the way, step by step, on all of these different pieces of the data. So Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you, for the quick, 5-minute overview, and then also open it up for comments and questions from the group about where they are, what roadblocks we have, and go from there.
Sure. So we've talked at pretty much every meeting about the steps to building the BT prophylaxis registry and real-time alert. And this is the order that it really needs to be done in identifying what regimens are used for VTE prophylaxis at your site, generating a list of doses for a pre-specified period of time to validate what it is that you have identified as the medication regimens. Once you've validated that, generating a full 2-year list of all VTE prophylaxis doses that were given, not given, missed, refused over the previous 2 years. That report being something that you're going to generate every 3 months after we implement, and then being able to send that those registry data to us at Hopkins. Thus far, we've received VTE prophylaxis registry data from 4 sites. We've received medication lists, gone over medication lists for all except 1 site. We are working with them on that medication list. So I don't think that there's much that we need to go on the medication list. If you can go to the next slide. Data submission, submitting trauma registry data, and also submitting VTE prophylaxis pre-implementation data. Now, I know that some people have raised issue that it may be a bit of a challenge to generate trauma registry data, and I wanted to open that up for discussion of if any sites are specifically having difficulty with generating trauma registry data.
And I'll just add on top of that, like, you know, I fully anticipated that the second column of missed dose data was going to be tricky to pull. You know, we knew that it was not within the wheelhouse of the trauma surgeons, the trauma program managers. You know, you need an Epic or a Cerner person to pull it, et cetera, fully expected that. But I will say, you know, from the trauma registry, like we routinely use that, and I didn't expect there to be the harder part of getting data out of the registry. So, you know, there's 4 of the sites that have the data to us. And I'm just trying to figure out what we could do to help with that piece of it for the registry part. Without calling on people by name, is there anyone who wants to just give me a, you know, what you think is the holdup for that part? Is it that you have the data and you can't upload it to us? We know, I know that there were some problems that people have had in that regard, and Brandon had some alternative options for physically getting us the data. But I would have thought that get a couple years of registry data was going to be relatively easy.
Hey, Elliot.
Yeah.
So for us, the registry data is going to be pretty easy. What we're having a problem with is the non-registry data. Our hospital wants to charge us something like $20,000 for the Epic build and pulling the data.
Yeah, and I saw that email and I wanted to see if we could maybe talk about it either online or offline, but I think that's a fair thing to talk about right now. You know, it's hard. Those teams that do all this stuff routinely want to do this. I think the nice part about it is, you know, we can go back and give you the letters of people who have supported this project from the beginning, who said, oh, we'll, you know, most of the places had a letter from a chief medical officer or chief medical information officer or someone like that, that said we would go ahead and support this. What we've actually done in the past is taken those letters and gone back to the people and been like, hey, Dr. So-and-so, you said you were going to help us with this project, and now we don't have $20,000. The whole project only brings each hospital $40,000. We don't have that because we're spending our money on the other time and energy. You know, you said you were going to do it. Would you please do this? So I will say that is one potential opportunity. If you don't have your letters handy, Lizette can certainly supply them back to you. I think that's, you know, one option. Like, hey, you said you were going to do it. It's not that hard. You need to do it to make the build anyway, right? Because they have to find those doses as the first step in creating the build, because you have to know the doses that you're going to trigger the alert on. I think that might be a first potential opportunity. Like, yes, if one team doesn't know about the whole agreement and the thing, this has been going on for 2 years and everybody agreed to it, and then they suddenly are asked to do it, they might be asking for money, but hopefully we can avoid that.
Hi, Elliot. It's Lisa Knowlton, also from Stanford. Thanks. That's helpful. I'll go back to that letter and give it to our RIC committee. Would it be possible to hear maybe from some of the sites who have been successful in getting the Epic data, like I see Christiana or Lancaster, how they kind of worked around some of those issues, understanding that each site is a little bit more, different, and there's different nuances?
I can speak to Christiana, but unfortunately we are on Cerner, so I can't speak to the Epic pool. We did it took a lot of time to work through this, both on the trauma registry side, because we actually, even though they normally pull this data to pull in a format to send over, we actually had to talk to the people that did the trauma registry, and we just happened to luck out that our IT was actually able to do this within. But again, we're on a Cerner platform, so I can't really speak to Epic.
But Lisa, I think the point is that, that they didn't get paid, they didn't have to pay for it. And they found the right person who has the skill set to be able to work on their data. Their Cerner, your Epic, most of the other sites are Epic. It's the idea of who is going to be able to spend the time to do this build. And then the point of who's going to pay for it, or does it need to be paid for, I think is the secondary piece.
Yeah.
The technical piece, once you figure out who that person is, once you know who to talk to, the technical piece is not nearly as hard as you might think. The harder part, I think, on your end is going to be who's going to give that person the thumbs up to go ahead and do it.
Okay, thank you.
I would start with the letter, and Lizette, I'm sure, can pull it and get it to you. And then, a nice, either a phone call or an email with that person and say, hey, you said you'd help us support this thing. And you can even say, the other sites are all working on it and making it happen. I mean, I don't want to have to say, oh, well, you had $40,000 and you have to spend 20 of it on this build. I mean, I don't think that's the way to do this, especially now that, you've probably spent a lot of the money on salary and time and energy from, you and David and the trauma program manager and the nurses and things like that. So.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, we could touch base offline.
Perfect. Any input from one of the other places, either Lancaster or Maryland? I'm trying to look and see who's on to see if there's any other advice or how you made this happen. I see Joanne on from Lancaster.
This is Paul from Maryland. So I tried, because we have a report that's already built in Epic that we use for our own internal process improvement. And so, but it comes in a PDF format. So I tried to get them to pull us a report just in an Excel format or a CSV file. But because it was for research purposes, they were forcing us to go through Research Harbor, which is going to charge us like $6,000. So we actually worked with our people with our trauma registry, who were able to, as long as we were able to show them where the fields were being pulled from, because all that data is already being pulled from Epic into our trauma registry, they just were able to access that information and pull it as a separate report.
Yeah, and I think this question of, is this research or is this quality, is an ongoing topic. As you know, we're still working on this manuscript about the IRB, and many of the sites have had, differing opinions come back to them from their IRBs. Some said, hey, this is clearly research and you need a research IRB. Others have said, hey, this is quality improvement and you can push it through as a quality improvement IRB. If you're at a place that has pushed it through as quality improvement, it might be easier to come back to them and say, hey, look, the IRB said this is quality improvement. We're doing this to improve care, to this is not a, randomized trial research kind of project. I realize it doesn't necessarily help because it has been a little bit fuzzy and is different at each place, but that's another potential option.
And I think just another thing is, like, for those of you that have your trauma registry data and are still waiting on trying to figure out the missed data portion, it is still helpful for y'all to go ahead and submit the registry data, trauma registry data to Brandon, so we can kind of work out, make sure that you're able to upload and everything as we continue working on the next step. So checking that one box off is still helpful to the team.
Yeah, as you can see, San Diego is a good example. They don't have the missed dose part, but they do have the registry data to us. Just to make sure the data is formatted right, we can take a look at it, et cetera. But I think this missed dose part is the, I'm not surprised that this is one of the bigger roadblocks.
And Elliot, just to clarify, because we've been simultaneously working on our process, to keep track of missed doses and whatnot. Can we still go ahead with implementing the other parts of this project while we continue to work on providing you with the data?
Well, I think I'll say sort of. And the reason I say that is I'd be surprised if your team can know the right patients and know the missed doses in real time to be able to build an alert. If they can do that part and then build the alert, they should be able to give you a report of all the missed doses. Does that make sense?
Right, yes, it does.
So I'm trying to figure out, like, I think if you're saying, oh, can we send you your trauma registry data? Absolutely. If obviously we've been pushing the nurse education, that's working in parallel. The sites are at 80, 85, 90% for many of the sites. That can happen in parallel. I think the harder part is because of the order in which you have to do the, to make the alert, step one is we have the med list. Step two is they find the missed doses in real time. And then once you have those missed doses in real time, then they can figure out how they're going to build this alert. I think once they have those missed doses in real time, that's where the data comes in before you're ready to turn on an alert. Does that make sense? I worry that I don't want to say, yes, you can make an alert and go ahead with the rest of the project and get us the data later, because I don't know how to make the alert without getting the data from missed doses. Did I explain that well?
Oh, hi, Dr. Hote. This is Shelley from Stanford. So we're actually almost done with the alert, because we were able to provide the population, the location, all of that. That part was actually quite easy. And as Dr. Knowlton said, the challenge is getting the retrospective missed doses for the last 2 years. And we've already worked out and operationalized, as we get these alerts, how we're going to keep track of these missed doses, and if due to the education, were those doses actually given. So that part we already have worked out, and we can still provide the number of missed doses and everything moving forward. So why we were asking, if this is going to take a while to get this report, because we've been directed to 2 different teams. We're just really getting the runaround for this report. Could we still implement the project and move forward with the alerts and the, because we already have confirmation that the alert is just about done?
I would not. And the reason for that is making sure that and I know that you've put effort into the alert, making sure that the data that you're going to be providing, both pre-implementation and post-implementation, that is the entire evaluation of whether or not the alert makes a difference, making sure that you are, one, capturing all of the different potential ways that VT prophylaxis regimen, that conceptually largely means the same thing, but could be documented multiple different ways, is being captured in your data, and that your alert, which really is triggered not based on your population or your floor, but it's really fundamentally triggered based on that medication regimen, all of the different ways that VTE prophylaxis could potentially be documented is triggering that alert. And unless there's a way that you're able to generate a list of all of the VTE prophylaxis regimens, how it's documented in Epic at your site, which is what you're trying to do as part of the VTE prophylaxis registry, it would be hard to know that you've actually built the alert to capture all of those different ways that it's documented, if that makes sense.
Right. What we did was we provided the list of the medications, and because medication is considered late if not given within an hour of the scheduled dose, that's how our alert was built. That was the foundation, is that, you know, if it's timed, if it's not recorded or administered within an hour, then it fires off the alert, and that alert goes to the charge nurses on the units, and our office in the trauma office, where we will then record and log these quote missed doses because they weren't documented within an hour.
Can you remind me, because just trying to keep every site straight is a little hard. How like methodologically, how you generated your medication list?
We worked with pharmacy, where they gave us all of the list of the VT prophylactic medications. And then based on the discussions here at these meetings, we narrowed it down to, I believe it was the enoxaparin, heparin, and provided those medications to this team that we're going to create the alert. And I think David Love is on the call, and he was instrumental in, I think, working with our team on that. We discussed, you know, in our discussions, a medication is considered late if it's not documented within an hour of administration, because the medications can be administered 1 hour prior to the scheduled dose or 1 hour after. And so they have built the BPA alert to fire if there's no medication of the ones that we provided, no matter what the dose is or the route, to fire if there was no documentation within an hour of the scheduled dose.
Did the
And I
list,
do see I will say, I do see the med list that Stanford has, and it is in like the appropriate format with medication, dose, frequency, and there's all these different frequencies. You know, I know you guys can't see my screen, but, you know, for example, 40 milligrams once a day is a pretty common dose. It says daily at bedtime, daily at night, daily before dinner, daily, etc., like every 24 hours, every evening, every morning. There's all these different options that we think of as the same, but clearly your Epic thinks of as different. So I see them all on there. So I think the med list is right. And then the alert is right. I think it's the hard part of, you know, if they have this whole list, the question is it not the same people building the alert based on this list? And if they're pulling it in real time, how hard is it to just go back and change the dates? That's kind of my question, but it sounds like that's where they want their $20,000.
Yeah, it's a different team.
Yeah.
To answer your question.
Yeah, it's similar to one of the other sites. They go back to saying that it's research and it's considered a research pull.
I have
Yeah,
a question in regards to what your alert is built off of, and it may just be that I'm not understanding. I get the fact that if it's late, it's not documented for an hour after, but what if the nurse actually documents in that cell and documents not given because of patient refusal? My understanding is based on what you're saying, that wouldn't generate an alert, but should generate an alert.
We did bring that up, and they worked that into their algorithm. So because they have to they can choose. If it says not given, then that it would fire an alert.
Got it. So the alert is for not given or nothing documented on that dose within an hour after the time.
Correct.
Got it.
And those are the only options that are given?
You mean for documenting?
Yes. Yes.
I have to check with the team.
So can I share my screen? I've removed all identifiers from an example of data that we've gotten from a site. That can help illustrate some of the challenges that we have and why it's kind of important to get the data beforehand. So we typically assume that that there are only a few ways to document whether something is administered or not. Just to give you an example, at one site, here are all of the potential different ways that somebody can document medication administration. So it could potentially, and this is more than what we have at other sites, including at Hopkins, which is why every site is so unique in the way that they document prophylaxis, the way that they document regimens, the way that they document administration. That making sure that you have these variables and what you're generating an alert on is done before you actually build the alert, because once you actually get these data, it could dramatically change the way that you would otherwise build an alert.
Yeah, and this is kind of the concept behind why we thought it was going to be pull the data, look at the data, get the information from the data about how it's documented and all these other pieces. And then you kind of have data in hand that you've looked at, then use the information you learn from looking at the data to make sure your alert fires on all the right patients. I mean, at some point, this is also a pragmatic project. So if it's going to be a while till you get your data and then you think that your alert is ready to go, what we probably should do is have a small meeting of a couple, maybe it sounds like 2 or 3 of the Stanford people with at least a few of us from Hopkins to go over. We've got a little bit of a list of like, okay, you're ready to go. Let's make sure we're doing A, B, C, D, and E. I think Lizette has shared that list. If not, we can certainly send it out. We can certainly get a meeting either later this week or next week to make sure we're ready to go. And this might be one where, you know, you don't have all the data because the research team hasn't been able to pull it, but you have the alert ready. My first answer would have been to agree with Brandon that I don't think we'll be able to do it in that order, but maybe if we talk separately offline, this is something that we could push forward in that way. We are going to still need the data because the primary analysis of how we're doing this is, as a reminder, each site is their own control, for lack of a better term. You know, we'll look at your data from the previous period and then compare it to the after period, the before after within each site, because we know there's huge variation by site in baseline number of doses that are not given. So, you know, aggregating it all and pulling it together doesn't really work. That's why the site by site comparison is going to be so important.
But even with sites acting as their own control, we want to make sure that the data that are being pooled that serve as the evaluation reflect what's being triggered for the intervention, such that we're not under alerting for missed doses, that we're not sending alerts to go and intervene for things that we should.
So how about this? How about we plan when we can work on a time, Lizette, if you want to work on a time for us sometime later this week or next week to meet one-on-one with the site and say, hey, let's go through the information. And if it looks like we're ready, we can make a decision. Especially if the data is going to be delayed. And then I think on the separate side would be the research piece to bring that letter back to the people who said they would do it and see what they can do. Does that seem fair?
Thank you. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Other topics, questions about either registry data or the missed dose data part? Okay, so in general, in my mind, at least, the missed dose data should be the same type of data pull, whether you're pulling it from, 2020 data or 2023 data. It should be a very similar, if not the exact same data pull, data setup. So we really have the same information to be able to compare before and after. But I think this was just a reminder that, each place is a little bit different. Like we said, this is not a randomized trial. It's not the same case report forms, et cetera. So we will keep going, but it's good to know, we're making progress. 3 or 4 sites have gotten each of the different kinds of data. We're hoping to get more in the next few weeks. Okay, Lizette, I think we can keep going. So this is where we stand on how close we think, to starting this real-time alert. There are these 3 sites that have been making enough progress that we are optimistic that all 3 of these will start within the next month in July. I know we've been discussing with them. We've met one-on-one with each site to go over things. And it looks as though hopefully we'll be getting started. And it will be very helpful for us to go back to PCORI and say, hey, I know we were delayed, but now we have these sites that are actually up and running within the next, within the next month or so. Are there people from those 3 sites that want to give us an update or kind of tell us where you think you are, or if this is realistic still?
Elliot, I'll speak to Christiana if
Sure.
that's okay.
Thanks,
So
John.
the thing that's actually still holding us up is, so we have our alert built, we have our med list in, we have the staff trained. In the one-on-one meetings, we determined that we were also going to have an alert that went out to remind the nurses, so that like when the alert goes out to the charge nurse, it also gets CC'd to me as well. But it would also trigger something in the EMR so that the bedside nurse would have a reminder to do this. That's actually what's holding us up. That's Cerner is still putzing around with that. We actually met with the floor last week because Cerner is still holding that piece up. And we talked to them about, what their thoughts were of going live without the alert built, not the alert built, but the task built. And they're a little concerned that if it's busy, they may get the alert to do the education, and it may get missed, and they don't have that reminder out there. And the reminder also allows us to check to make sure that it was done. So that is the one thing that we're waiting for. We're trying to think of, if Cerner continues to hold up on this, do we just try and go live anyway and maybe document this on paper or something, try and re-educate the charge nurses until we get something from Cerner that's more definitive in the system? Just because Lancaster and Maryland are close, I wondered, are you guys doing something similar like that? When the alert goes out, is there a task somehow built into your EMR that like the nurse then documents against or reminds them, so that if they're busy, when the charge nurse or whoever comes over and says, hey, your patient refused, you're in the middle, I know you're in the middle of 9 things, but remember, do you guys have something to back that up, or how are you guys working that piece? Because that's really the only thing holding us up.
So John, before they answer, I will tell you, we did not build anything like that into our Epic build. Ours really was, and like I said before, we had a little bit of an older fashioned system with going to a pager. It went to the physical pager, and then it was up to the person carrying the pager to go find it's usually the charge nurse, go find the bedside nurse and tell them, hey, Mr. Smith refused in bed 2. why don't you go do this intervention? We did not build anything into our Epic as a reminder, as a task, as anything else. We thought it was just going to be way too complex and difficult. And we thought the simple, easy, hey, the pager went off, go find a human-to-human topic or discussion was a better approach. So, I mean, personally, I think it's hard because I'm not a Cerner person and I'm not a nurse. But I think if you have the alert otherwise ready to go to the charge nurse and to you as well, I would be tempted to try to go ahead and push for this to happen, even if we start with it and see how it goes. And then, hey, if there's problems, or they can keep working on it, and then in 3 months, they can make a change if need be. But I would be tempted to push ahead with the quote unquote simple, straightforward alert. That'd be my opinion. Maybe Doreen wants to chime in as someone who's done this, a bunch at Hopkins before the other two sites talk also.
No, I agree with you, Elliot, that, that's actually icing on the cake, is having that reminder. So the key thing is that initial alert to the charge nurse, and then usually that would effectively deliver the education to the patient. The reminder is more of a nicety.
So that'd be our opinion. How about the Lancaster or Maryland group? Maybe as you tell us kind of where you are, if you could help answer John's question, if you're building anything in as a reminder automated into the EMR.
So this is Paul at Maryland. So we have Epic, and so there's sort of already a built-in reminder, because the task turns from being, a blue color to actually red whenever it's overdue. Or if it's refused or not given, it shows up as red on the MAR. And then we also have a task list that's already built. And so you would still have a medications dose that sort of shows up on that task list. If that's not reminder enough to the staff nurse, I'm not sure that anything other than a person going to that person and saying, hey, this dose was either refused or missed or what have you, what are we going to do about it? And, that needs to sort of happen in real time. I don't think the other sort of alerts from the electronic medical record are going to really change the nurse's behavior.
Okay. So where do you guys think you are with your alert, and how close is this July realistic?
So our person is ready to pull the trigger on the alert. We were just waiting for our nurses to get to their required amount of education.
Got it. And I know we haven't talked about the education numbers. I know you guys are lower than the 80% at this point, but I know you were going to change potentially your target numbers, taking out some of the travelers and all. So I wonder how close we are to that. But it sounds like the alert part, the technical piece, is not your holdup now. It's the making sure the nurses have done the education.
Yeah, our staffing is our major holdup. Our staffing numbers are horrible. So
yeah, you are not alone.
It's a constant moving target. So I got the last unit's roster of nurses last week, so I just need to go in and cross off the nurses that are no longer there, and
okay,
potentially add some other nurses or what have you. But
got it. Okay, but we're making progress, and it sounds like from a technical standpoint, you're ready to go. It really is just getting the last few nurses up and educated.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. So you'll keep us in the loop, and hopefully, it sounds optimistic that July might actually happen.
Yes.
Perfect. How about Lancaster?
Sometime.
Sure, thanks.
Hi, it's Joanne. We're still kind of stuck on the electronic notification. I've emailed them twice. We just had a recent Epic upgrade, so I'm sure they're all focused on that part, but I'm pushing this forward, and I included our administration just so that they're aware that we're ready to go. We'll reach out for, our last education update. We're ready to go except for the electronic notification. So again, it's every 3 or 4 weeks I'm reaching out saying, where are we? And so that's where we're at. So we're very, very, very close.
I appreciate it. And I think you might be another one of the sites where if we give you your letter, that letter of support from your CMIO, Chief Medical Information Officer, might be a helpful piece to say, hey, you guys said you were going to do this. And I know you've been talking to them for months about it. Like, hey, what can we do to make this happen? This thing is supposed to be going. So if that would be helpful, Lizette, if you don't mind, Lizette, just sending back that letter of support as a reminder.
Yeah, they report to him. So I would very much appreciate that, so we can move this forward, because I've been struggling a little bit, but we are so close. I can almost taste it. So
yeah, and I'm excited. I think it's this like 3-way race to see what see who can get going first.
yes.
Okay. Anybody else feel like they're close? I'm not going to make you commit, and I'm not going to put August on here, but are there places that are making some more progress that you think you'll be able to do soon? And honestly, I understand if people don't want to talk about it in general here, but like afterwards, if you could send, I know there's always a flurry of emails at 4:01 right after this meeting to me, Lizette, some combination of people. But hopefully you're hearing some ways that this is happening. And, hopefully for her next meeting, we'll be able to say, these are the sites that are up and running. And if there's anything the sites that are up and running could do to help the others, that would be great. John, circling back to you. So what do you think about the start without that additional other piece? Like Paul was saying, maybe if you've already got some reminders in there, what they really need is a human, whether it's you some of the time or that charge nurse some of the time, coming to them and saying, hey, it wasn't given. Let's do this intervention.
So that piece is already built in. So the plan is as you said, the alert goes to the charge nurse approaches the bedside nurse.
Yep.
So there is that direct communication. What I'm actually hearing from the bedside nurses is again, because staffing's short, they've had a lot of, openings and whatnot, that, if they're busy at the time, even though the charge nurse is going to them, they would like that reminder in there to guarantee that they do it, especially if it's close to shift change, because that task would stay out there. So if the offgoing shift didn't get to it, the oncoming shift would show it as an open task. Do I see that as a hard stop? No. In fact, Dr. Warner and I have been talking about this, that potentially we may have to go live with this beforehand anyway. I think we're going to have some more discussion in the next week or so. The unit manager that I'm discussing with was just away. He's coming back. I think we're going to plan on sitting down with him. I'd still like to see us go live sooner rather than later, because the longer you delay, the more people forget things. But again, I have to get some buy-in from the floor as well. So I think we're really close. If I can get Cerner to put this in, that's great. It just gives us that extra layer to back everything up. If we can't get Cerner and we're going to go live in the meantime, and we're going to go, with some other format, maybe among the couple of us here, we could discuss something like how do we make sure that this is getting done? Because it sounds like, and I don't know, in Epic, like, when you guys hand off that the education piece is done, it doesn't sound like you guys chart anywhere that the education was done. It's relying on that the communication chain got this done, and then maybe the medication gets given or retimed. But it doesn't sound like you guys really have a hard place that's documenting that, hey, the nurse is attesting that, hey, I did this education. It doesn't sound like that's anywhere else.
And your point is well taken. And the way we did it in the very first small pilot study on 4 floors was Doreen kept a separate research log of like, these were all the alerts, Mr. Smith on Tuesday, Mr. Jones on Wednesday, and did she or did she not do the intervention? And that was when we had a dedicated paid for person. one of the things we got feedback from the nurses when we were trying to scale this up to, whole hospitals and, 20 floors was you can't ask us to do other stuff. So we kind of, for lack of a better term, it's an intention to treat. We put this intervention in place. We don't know if it was used 10% of the time, 20% of the time, 50%, 80%. But what we do know is even when we don't record the education was done, this and that, we are still able to decrease the missed doses. That's this pre-post comparison. We're able to decrease the missed doses by 50%. So even without that piece, John, where, the nurse documents, I went in and I educated and I showed the video and I gave, even just without that documentation, we're still able to show that process measure of missed doses decreases. So, I mean, I would, especially now that, you've had your nurses trained up, you've had your huddles, you've been talking to them. I worry that the longer you wait, like you said, they're going to forget what's been going on.
Right.
So,
Right. So I guess then let me go back to everybody, see what the buy-in is based on that different assumption. If we get the task, and I mean, maybe the task down the line makes us actually more compliant overall than any other site because you have that extra reminder. But in the meantime, from what it sounds like, you guys would be okay with us going live without that piece because it's not a component other places.
I think so. That's what I would suggest.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk offline and after I get an answer back from everybody and we'll let you know. But in that case, I would say we would be okay for July.
That sounds great. Okay. I love it. Okay. Lizette, I think we can plow ahead. There's a few more. So we've gone over the pieces of the real-time alert. There's that Excel spreadsheet with some of these questions. If you've got questions, send the email to me, Lizette, Brandon. We can help with all the logistics of it. And then the nurse education. So we're doing pretty well. We now have 8 sites that are at 80% or more. I know I've been talking to San Francisco offline separately. They're kind of in a standstill. And I know Paul, thank you for doing the work at Maryland. That 117 number I know is changing somewhat. So I think we've certainly seen other sites change their percentage by changing their denominator. Totally fair. If you have all these nurses that don't work there anymore, please take them out of the denominator. So, overall we're at 73%. And like I said, it's 8 hospitals at the 80%. So we're almost there, making progress. And then just a reminder, you guys should have all this. We keep the slide in each time about, the posters, the badge cards, the little postcards with the screen or the QR code on it that people can use. So this stuff should all be all ready. This is easy piece. So if you don't have this or have any questions about it, Lizette can certainly resupply it to everybody. We know about what the bundle looks like. We've mentioned that again. I just we put it in the slides every time just as a reminder. And then, Doreen has been willing to come in, like I said, in person. Lancaster, Maryland, Christiana are all super close and easy, 10-minute or 1-hour drive, all certainly doable to do in person. And then the other places, certainly reasonable to do via Zoom for whatever makes sense, whether that's a team huddle, whether it's a staff meeting, whatever it is. You all have Doreen's contact. Please reach out to her directly to set up times for her to come and help each of the sites. The last thing I think we end with is a little bit about the Delphi project. So round 2 has been launched. We're still actively working on it. I think the next slide has the data. So round 1 had 186 responses from the 11 sites. Most of the sites were above 10. There were a few that were a little bit higher. So far, we've got about a third-ish of the people have now responded to round 2. So just maybe a reminder to send it out to people. It does not come from me at my email or Stephanie from her email. It comes from Calibrum, which is the company that helps run this. So it might kind of go to spam folders. So it might be worth just if each of you look in your spam folder to just make sure it's there. And then if you see something, and especially if it went to spam, send it out to the same people you sent it out to before, like, hey, please be on the lookout. This might be in a junk or spam folder. Please help us. The second round is a lot quicker. The way it works is you go in, you click on it, and you can see what other people voted on different questions, and you can potentially change your vote to kind of see if we can work towards consensus to get agreement amongst a higher number of people. But I think we're making significant progress. This project is going pretty well. And I think that is it. We have 5 minutes left. If there's any other questions, now would be the time if people have things to talk about, questions, comments on any of the different pieces. Please chime in now. I think the key piece, and we've mentioned it again, and I mean, I don't know how much more we can hammer it home, is we got to get up and running on the active alert and getting some data to us and getting the alert built and out there. So I think that's the main takeaway for this meeting today.
Elliot, any chance you could forward the round 2 survey to me? Because if it did go into spam, I could forward it again.
Sure. I will find something from it. If you filled, so as a reminder, the only people who will get it are people who did round 1. So if you did not personally do round 1, you will not get the email from Calibrum for round 2. But John,
No.
I will look for it. And
Yeah, because I can send it back out to the group just as a reminder, because if they don't recognize it for somebody else, they might recognize it from me and get a better response.
And what I'll do is I'll actually find one of the emails and send it out to this whole group as well.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, issues, whatever people have to say? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I know it's sometimes painful and we're all banging our heads against the wall trying to get this thing done. And it feels like parts of it are out of our control. But hopefully we're getting to the point where we'll actually see some of the fruit of our labor. You know, the nurses, we've educated almost 1,000 nurses. And once we start educating the patients, really, hopefully we'll see some change in clinical practice. So thank you all again.
Thank you, everyone.
We
Have a
will
good
be
day,
in
everyone.
touch.